Today, we're going to talk about how to get your first cloud architect job. There's some people on the screen that I'll introduce you to before we begin, maybe make some announcements, and then we'll talk about how to get your first cloud architect job. So I'm Michael Gibbs. I've been an architect now for a little over 25 years now. And I've been a network architect, a cloud architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, you name it, the architecture roles, I've been there. I was a principal architect within 2 years of my 25 years, so I made it to principal architect and had about a quarter of a century of experience there. I've also spent more than 2 decades training others and getting them their first tech job, getting $100,000, $200,000 raise, getting promotions, negotiating offers, that sort of thing. And I can tell you that I have graduates now, or people that I've trained or coached, that have worked at Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Palo Alto Networks, Zscaler Systems, Checkpoint with some people that I've changed, another big security company, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, the big banks like JP Morgan Chase and Barclays Bank, big TV companies and broadcasting, such at this point as things like the British Broadcasting Company. So I've been training people forever. I'm going to introduce you to Mark. Mark is a network architect. He's a Cisco certified internet expert, actually just like me. He's been a network architect for about a decade. He helps teach some of the networking and the infrastructure in our program. Some days I do it, some days the networking stuff, he does it, and it's based upon what branch it is on the networking. If it's more modern networking like SD-WAN, Mark covers it. If it's critical infrastructure, I cover it. On the bottom of the screen, you see Alonzo Coleman. Alonzo and I, we worked together a lot. Alonzo came to us. He did what a lot of people did. He went out there and got a bunch of certifications. No one had any interest in him. He came to us. We trained him. We got Alonzo a job on the cloud. And let me just say, I called Alonzo and begged him to come be part of our team because he used to also work in marketing for about 30 years. He has an MBA on marketing. And I wanted someone with Alonzo's expertise to teach our students how to build such a good brand that they'd never even need to apply for jobs, and people would come to interview them all the time. And he's helped us do that. So Alonzo's there. He does also teach business acumen. He's part of our instructor staff, but I got to tell you, he's our chief marketing officer for a reason. The better bait you have coming to you, you don't need to apply for jobs and get auto rejected. People will come to you, want you, and then want to interview you and hire you. So regardless of your experience levels. So I think I'm supposed to make an announcement that we do have a July 4th special that will start on July 4th, but right now you can get exclusive access to it, and for 24 hours from now at 50% off of any of our training programs. So if you want to train with us, now's your time, and it's never going to get cheaper than this. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about how I actually broke into tech because I'm not from tech, and what I needed to do, the mistakes that I initially made, and why I had to create a system to take people that weren't from tech and get them tech jobs. And it doesn't matter if you're an engineer who wants to be an architect or if you're a nurse who wants to be a cloud architect. You can get there, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've not graduated high school, like Daniel Bosu. We trained him. We got him hired at JP Morgan Chase. It doesn't matter if you've never worked in tech, like Al Legister, who went to Deloitte as a senior solution architect as his first job. Or it doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home mom, like Balwinder Kerr. We trained her and she got his first solution architect job at Microsoft. Or if you're Jordan Kittico, who was a college student we trained, who we got hired by AWS as a solution architect, along with Coyote, along with Ivan Tamba, and so many more. And I can give you examples after examples, and I probably will throughout this. But all of you can be everything, but I promise you, most of you probably make the same mistakes I did, and it's keeping you from getting hired. We'll then talk about what hiring managers want. Because if you don't have the perfect resume, and here's an imperfect resume, you haven't been an architect for a decade. So for David Lithicum and I, who collaborate all the time on things, we've got a perfect resume. I apply for a job, and people are going to want to talk to me. Now, if you don't have that perfect resume, there's things that you can do based on what the hiring managers dream about that will make you so much more likely to get hired and for a higher salary. So we're going to talk about what those things are. Then we're going to talk about why you can't really apply for jobs, and you need a good marketing strategy and a branding strategy and a recruiter team to get your first job. And we'll talk about why that is, so you don't get auto-rejected by HR. And then we will cover every single skill you need to be a wonderful cloud architect. And if you want to ask about other architecture careers, like an enterprise architect or an AI architect or a security architect, we can talk about them as well, because architecture and engineering are completely different. And that's the biggest mistake people make in their architecture training, is they train to be an engineer when they want to be an architect, and they can't get hired. So I told you I would tell you the story of where I came from, because I want you to know that anyone, it doesn't matter where you come from, can get any job. What I did is I used to practice internal medicine, and I had in my own internal medicine clinic. I did it. I loved it. But I had this crazy infatuation with technology, specifically networking. I was infatuated by it, and I'll tell you why. Most of my family's in Greece, and I love it over in Greece, and I love my family in Greece. And I wanted to pick up the phone and call my relatives in Greece. It was about $4 a minute back in 1996. Now, to put it into context, I was working as a paramedic firefighter, earning $8.25 an hour at the time. And all of a sudden, it was like, before I went into internal medicine, and it was like, so I'm earning $8.50 an hour, and it cost me $4 or more to call my family members. And honestly, when you took the taxes out of the $8.50, it was basically, I had to work 1 hour to speak to a relative in Greece for 1 minute. So right around that time, I saw the internet was starting to come out and bloom. And I needed to be part of this whole internet revolution, because I wanted to communicate with my relatives in Greece. And I knew that was the way to do it, without writing letters that took a week to get from US to Greece and what have you. I just was infatuated with it. So what I did was the following. I didn't think to go get training, which was first my own initial mistake. And I went and built a house of routers and switches and servers and workstations. I was so infatuated with it. I had to bring in electricians, and we had to bring in extra power to the house because the house couldn't support the power. I had to get 3 additional air conditioners installed in my house. And thankfully, in those days when I was practicing internal medicine, my wife, who's a saint, she was like, I know you're spending all of our money on this. You're infatuated with this. Please, at some point, can you actually like save some of the money you earn at work so we don't spend our entire future on tech? And I was like, well, okay. But I love this tech thing. And I'll tell you what happened, and I'll tell you why I left healthcare. I was starting to have those kind of conversations with my wife. And then one day, I was working on this routing protocol called BGP. I built my whole career on BGP. I love BGP. And I was trying to figure this BGP thing out on my own in my house. It was about 2:30 in the morning. My wonderful wife walks into my computer room and she says, "Dear, are you going to come to bed? You got to round on your patients at 7 a.m. You got to be in your clinic at 9 a.m. And when are you going to sleep?" And I said to her, "I really want to work in tech." And I didn't say that. I said to her that I got to figure out this BGP thing. And then she said, because it was my love, and she said to me, "Mike, seriously, get a job in this." And in my heart, I wanted to work in tech. I just never really thought I could do it. I never thought I could give up my actual career as a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine. So when she said that to me, it hit a chord, because it was my dream, honestly. So I did what everybody else did, is I went and called my local computer school, and they told me it's easy to get into technology. All you need to do is get certified. And I didn't know better, but I really thought, this could be my opportunity to do something different. So I took the local computer school. In those days, they didn't have any kind of online training, so they had to hire real experts to teach the courses. And guess what happened? I passed the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certifications, because that's what they told me I needed. I also was a Microsoft Certified Professional, and I got to tell you, there was not a single employer that you could possibly find that cared about it at all. So I was pretty frustrated. And I said, I have this MCSE thing. I love this networking thing. It's not that I don't have a job where I need a job, but I'm working hard towards this. Why am I not getting hired? The school told me something that was honestly terrifying to me. They said, "That's because you lack the other certifications you need." And I said, "Well, nobody told me I needed certifications before, so what certifications do I need?" And they said, "Mike, you need to have a Cisco certified network professional. And to get prior to that, you need a Cisco certified network associate." So I said, okay. So I read the CCNA book. I knew that was something pretty easy I could do on my own, passed that certification, and signed up for their 10-day, $11,000 Cisco certified network professional bootcamp. And mind you, that was 20 some years ago. where $11,000 was worth about $25,000 in today's terms. But I took this course. It was a little ridiculous. I maxed out my credit card to do it, and poof. Now I have a CCNA, a CCNP, an MCSC, and an MCSC. I'm going to get hired, right? 2 professional certifications. So I looked around and nothing, no one had any interest in me. So now I figured maybe the school gave me bad information, and I called another school. Well, Mr. Gibbs, to work in networking, you need a Cisco certified design professional, but in order to get that, you need a Cisco certified design associate. And I said, okay, what do I need to do? They said, we've got a boot camp for you. So guess what? I go to the boot camp, I get the CCDA, the CCDP. Now I've got 6 certifications. 3 are professionals, which I know employers care about. I know employers don't care about associate certifications, even then, but 3 are professional certifications and 3 are associate. So I'm 6X certified, right? And they're big certifications. So I sent out 5 more resumes. And I'll tell you what happened. I got rejected, 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 and rejected. Now, the only good thing that I can say out of that failure was I did get a call back from one of the employers. And it was, hi, I'm the network engineering manager at XYZ company. I can't remember. You know, Mike, I got to tell you, I've never seen a resume like yours. And he said, I wish I could hire you, but you've got no degrees in tech and you've got no experience in tech. He said, now, if I was looking for someone to take care of my staff, provide employee health care, I could see doing that and then potentially mentoring you in technology, but no degrees in tech, no experience in tech. I don't care about certifications. How can I hire you? And then I got another email rejection letter that was actually somewhat real and said something similar, but this conversation really changed my life. And I went, oh, wait, I've done the tech. I've done the certifications. I'm not getting hired. Wait, what do I do? Well, when I'm stressed, or at least I used to before I got so injured, here's what I was involved in: powerlifting, and then at some point in my life, Olympic weightlifting. So I went to the gym that night. I was frustrated. I was doing some 700-pound deadlifts. I was powerlifting in those days. And I did one of my sets, and I honestly laid down on the ground. I can remember doing it because those sets were so exhausting with 700 pounds. I couldn't even stand in between sets. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge guy comes walking over to me. And I knew the guy. He was a bodybuilder, a competitive bodybuilder. His name was Brian. And Brian comes over to me and says, Mike, how's your tech job search going? I'm like, Brian, I don't understand this. I sent out 5 resumes, and he's finished my sentences. And he said, you got 5 rejections, right, Mike? And I said, yeah. I said, what gives? Because that's what was in vogue language at the time. And Brian says, you applied for jobs. You've got no degrees or no experience. You're going to get auto rejected. They didn't have auto rejection, but whatever, something like that. He said, they'll just immediately reject you. And I said, well, that kind of feels like what I'm going through. And he said, what you need to do is go straight to the hiring manager. He said, here's the thing. There's this guy, Drago, and he will help you find an interview. He'll pre-sell you to the hiring manager. You'll interview with the hiring manager. And guess what? If you can prove to the hiring manager that you're everything they want, they'll hire you. So I heard that. I was really, really excited. I go home. I tell my wife, good news. I know how to get hired. I have to call Drago. And my wife kind of makes a joke out of it. And she says, dear, remember when you were asking me out on our first date and you talked about your shoes and your feet? I'm like, yeah, embarrassingly, yes. She said, that didn't go so well for you, right? And I said, no, not so much. She said, maybe you should call a couple of practice recruiters before you call this guy Drago. And I said, smart idea. I lived in Philadelphia. My family doesn't speak English. They speak Greek at home. We had to translate from my family Greek to English constantly. I knew I couldn't leave that area. So I called a recruiter in California. When I called the recruiter in California, guess what? The recruiter told me, he told me what I needed to know. I asked that recruiter, I'm struggling here. I said, I've got all these certifications. I said, I have all these skills. And I told the recruiter about the lab that I built and all these other things that I had done. And the recruiter says, well, look, Mike, what you've done is what you think employers want. So the employers want something that's actually different. He said, in the perfect network engineer, we want this, 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 and this. He said, "You've got the certifications, but you're lacking the rest of the stuff." And I went, "Okay." And after that, that's when things changed. I wrote down a list of everything the employers wanted. And then I went back to my wife and we talked about it. And she says, "I wonder if he's right." And I said, "I don't know either." I said, "I called him. He's in San Jose. That's the heart of Silicon Valley. I think he does." And my wife and I agreed I needed a bigger sample. So what I actually did, and this is how I formed your Get Your First Tech Job method, which has helped so many people over the years, is I called 50 more recruiters and I asked them, what are employers begging for in the perfect network engineer? What is it that when you send someone in on the first interview, the employers want them so badly that they bring them in and then they hire them? And it gave me a list of things. And I got a list from 50 people. And at the end of the 50 people, I threw out the statistical anomalies, which is what you do in good statistics. And I focused on the core. And I said, this is what employers want. This is what I am. One versus me. Hireable versus me. And I did a gap analysis to say, what are the gaps between this and this? And then over the next few months, I filled in all these gaps. I went on my first interview, and I can tell you exactly how it went. It was in Piscataway, New Jersey. I had interviewed with the hiring manager. His name was Devendra. He was a Punjabi guy, really, really good guy. And here's the thing. When I spoke to Devendra, he asked me the interview questions. "Tell me about yourself." And I was like, okay, I know how to do this. I prepared for this. The recruiters told me hiring managers are going to ask this. I gave him an answer. He was so happy. He was nodding, leaning forward, and I could see a smile on his face. You could tell it's a real smile when you see it in the forehead as well. And I saw that. I'm like, okay, this is really good. Devendra then asked me a question. He says, "This is going to be a really hard technical question. I want to base on you and see where you're at." And he asked me a deep question on OSPF, the routing protocol. Well, I knew employers demanded people to have good OSPF skills. You know what I did? I learned that entire protocol. So when that employer asked me that question, I gave Devendra an answer that dazzled him. And he was leaning in and smiling. And he said, "Well, you know OSPF." And I was thinking, okay, this is good. First one done. We'll see where the rest of this interview goes. He then asked me a question. He said, "Since you know so much about OSPF, which I can never find, let's talk about BGP. Nobody knows that." So then he asked me a deep question on BGP. I knew employers needed BGP, especially in the ISP space, and I was going to be working for an internet service provider. So guess what? I read all the BGP RFCs, Bassam Halabi's book, a half a dozen times, labbed it up a whole lot because I wanted to be an engineer in those days. Devendra asked me this question on BGP. I answer him. Wow, you should have seen the response. He liked it. He complimented me on the answer. And he said, "Well, I wasn't expecting to get these kind of responses. I'm going to ask you one more tech question." And he asked me some wacky question about EIGRP, and he was talking about feasible distances and feasible successors. And it just wasn't someplace that I had put my study up time because you can't learn everything. I learned what the majority of employers wanted. So he asked this question. I said, "Devendra, honestly, I'm sorry. I've really not had a lot of opportunity to really work with EIGRP or know it that well." I said, "Here's the thing, Devendra. I am energetic, I am enthusiastic, and I absolutely love technology. Devendra, if this was important to you, this EIGRP thing, I would stay up all night. I would read every specification, every book, and practice with it, even if it was 1,000 pages a day until I was the best EIGRP person on your team. But I really, if you want to know my competency, let's talk about IP multicast, OSPF, or BGP." Well, that was the end of my interview. I saw Devendra had a really interesting smile. And I'm only in there for 20 minutes. And it's MCI WorldCom, the world's largest internet service provider. And he shakes my hand, Mike, and he says, "I'm going to hire you." And I was like, wow, this is great. And he said, "But I do have a problem with you." And I thought, okay. Because, everybody told me that in order to be a network engineer, or in order to be anything, you had to waste your time in help desk or be a systems admin. And then you get there. And it's not a waste of time if you want to work in help desk or be a systems admin. But if you want to be an architect, you're not spending your time wise in another person's career. But so many people told me I needed to have experience before I could become a network engineer. I thought maybe it's it. Now Devendra is going to smack me down and tell me I need to be like a network admin or something like that, or help desk in the network place. But he didn't say that. What the vendor said is, I'm going to hire you as a senior network engineer. He said, you didn't ask for enough money, which nobody has ever heard of before in their life, including my recruiter. And he said, you are not a network engineer. You're a senior network engineer. He said, I just interviewed you and you know more than 2/3 of my staff. You also told me you've never worked in networking before, other than your home lab. He said, if you're better than 2/3 of my staff now and you haven't worked, what's going to happen with you in 2 months, 3 months? He said, if I don't make you a senior network engineer, you're going to be out of here. 3 months into it, he made me the lead architect for the team. That was MCI WorldCom, which is now Verizon, the world's one of the largest ISP, especially in those days. So I got hired. Now, these were the lessons learned that, please, I want you to understand this, because this is the secret to getting a job, a great job, like an architect job, especially if you don't have experience. And if you're an engineer, you are not an architect. You still need to realize you're transitioning careers. So this is what employers want. And if you're a high school teacher, which we got hired, that's fine. We got actually multiple high school teachers hired. Keith was one of them, and Nicole Chow was another one of them. But it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're these things, you'll get hired. From an employer perspective, competency, or the ability to do the job and do it well, matters more than experience. And you can ask Mark and I more about this later when we interview people. Sometimes I interview somebody with no experience and they are so smart, I say I have to have them on the team because they know it. Sometimes I ask people questions that have 25 years experience and they don't know anything about anything. I hire the person that can do the job and do it well. And why, as a hiring manager, do we hire the person that can do the job and do it well? Well, the reason we're hiring is that there's work to be done. And if we don't hire a person that does the work because they can, we get fired. So above all, more than your degrees, more than your certifications, more than your experience, we care about your ability to do the job and do it well. That is 50% of your interview right there. Because if we average your interview, about 50% of your points go to this. The other 50% are other things. And we're going to talk about those other things in a minute. But the second thing is you must be what the hiring manager desires. What do I mean by this? Well, if you were going to if you wanted to hire an airplane pilot to pilot your private plane, and you interviewed someone and they said, I'm an attorney, you'd say, thank you very much. I need an airplane pilot. I'll call you if I have legal issues. Well, in tech, people do it all the time. They want to go work as an architect and they come in and they're prepared to be a developer. It doesn't matter how many years you've been a developer. If I need an architect, I need an architect, not a developer. If I need an engineer, I don't need an architect, then I can't hire an architect. I need an engineer. So you have to be what the hiring manager desires. And most people have really damaged their profile and spread their knowledge to spread themselves so thin. They're not what the hiring manager desires. So we'll talk about what they desire. The next thing that I learned, when you're new or when you have an imperfect resume, you have to go to the hiring manager first, because HR is just going to block you, because HR doesn't know how to judge your experience or gauge your competency. They know pay structure, they know benefits, they know the legal issues involved with people, but they don't know how to gauge your competency. So there's that. So unless you perfectly match the job description, I'm going to tell you right now, nobody does, almost ever. But unless you perfectly match that job description, chances are you won't make it to the hiring manager. But a good recruiter will do the following. See that girl Chow in the middle of the screen with a plant behind her? Here's what a good recruiter will do. Mark's the hiring manager over there. Hi, Mark. It's Joey, the recruiter from the recruiting firm. I got to tell you about Chow. I know you need a cloud architect. Here's the thing. I have Chow in my office right now, and I spoke to Chow. Chow is a rock star. She's a good lead. She communicates well. She's got a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and passion. While we were here, I had some people that really gave her and grilled her, and she's really smart. She understands architecture. Mark, would you like to meet with her?
Of course, I trust you. Send them my way. I'll schedule something with her.
And I'll send them my way. And here's why you can't be blocked by HR. When Chow goes to that interview and Mark loves her, Mark's going to do the following, because I've done this many times. And here's the phone call with HR. Hi, it's Mark from the network architecture or the cloud architecture team. I'm going to be bringing on Chow Pham to my team. Chow Pham is not only an extraordinary good architect, but she's got all the soft skills, leadership skills, executive skills that I really need. Now, because she's got those extra skills, I need to pay her a little more than the average architect. I need to give her first offer at about $190,000 a year. I know that comp ratio is about 1.3 compared to the average, but I really believe she's going to be worth it. Next thing that'll happen, Mark will call Chow. I've got an offer for you. There'll be a piece of paper, because that's the way it works when you go through the recruiters in the first place. And then Chow will start working. Now, Chow is so good, Mark promotes her. And now she's a senior cloud architect. And right after she gets her promotion, she's going to get an auto rejection letter from HR that says, Chow, I'm sorry you don't meet the requirements to work here. Your lack of experience, whatever. Meanwhile, Chow's laughing all the way to the bank. She's already hired. And I got to tell you, I've been auto rejected by most of the jobs that I've already had and been promoted out of, as have a lot of the students we have, but it doesn't matter. You're already working there, you're already promoted. And it just shows you how you need to keep HR out of the process, because if you don't have that perfect resume, if you don't look like me or David Lithicum on paper, you're probably going to get auto rejected. So it's not about mass applying. It's about having a brand and getting people to come to you and want you and need you. Here's another secret. There's a major difference between a job description and what a hiring manager wants. I've never been on an interview where I didn't get hired. And in 40% of the interviews that I took in my career, I was offered a better job than the one I applied for. How do I know it's 40%? I interviewed and accepted 5 offers with 5 companies, and 2 of them offered me a better job. So it was pretty easy to remember. I've also been on other interviews. I've never not been hired in an interview, but when I've been on other interviews, I've said no quite a few times, but these were the companies that I chose to take, 5 companies throughout my career. I was a lead architect at MCI WorldCom. I was a principal architect at Riverstone Networks, which is now Nokia. Prior to that, it was Alcatel. I was a principal 2 architect at Comcast, one of the largest internet service providers in the United States. I was a lead enterprise architect at Cisco Systems. So I've been doing this architecture thing, and that's the key. You have to know the difference between the job description, which is usually a cut and paste garbage, versus what the hiring managers desire. So we'll tell you what they desire. I also learned this. Anyone out there can get a tech job with the right preparation. Whether it was Richard Ferrari, who came to us, he was working at a bank, not in tech. And 6 months later, he got hired as a solution architect at another bank. Whether it was Arun, who was in Canada, who was working at Home Depot, not in tech, and after a couple of months with us, he got hired as a solution architect at TELUS. It just doesn't matter. Whether it was Lenny Burnett, our video editor, who's now working as a solution architect for Arrow Electronics, and I can give you more examples if you desire, or Delroy Batt, who was a 24-year-old working on ambulances, who got his first security architect job after our training at CDW. So anybody can get the right job with the right preparation. I'm also going to tell you this. Many unrelated jobs will actually give you the right experience. I learned more about architecture by learning to practice medicine than I ever did by learning anything about engineering. What's an architect do? They meet with a client, they ask about their business goals, pain points, challenges. They make an assessment of the situation. They make a diagnosis and a plan. What's the doctor do? Someone comes in, you ask them some questions, you examine their systems, you make a diagnosis and a plan. Doctor interview a patient, nurse practitioner interview a patient, architect interview a client, doctor make a diagnosis, architect make a diagnosis, doctor make a plan called the prescription, architect make a plan called an architecture. It's the same job. And when you want to sell yourself for the new job, you want to be able to show the employers the work that you did, how it's related to your new job. And that actually can be used as work experience. And you have to be able to sell that on the interview. Now, I've done this for 20 years. And after 20 years, I've improved the system. But that's really the secret, is knowing what the employer wants, knowing how to relate your past life to your future life and how it can help them, and showing them that you're competent, plus having these attributes. So you have to have the ability to do the job. That goes without saying. That is your competency. But it's not just technical competency, it's business competency, architect. Here's what the rest of the things are. Someone they can trust. A hiring manager cannot hire someone they can trust. So here's the thing. So what happens is a lot of people fake their resume to get through the HR, who won't hire anybody without the perfect resume. And then we hiring managers ask people questions about the resume, And guess what happens? They can't answer it. So they lied to us and we can't hire them. Or we ask someone a question that they don't know. And guess what? They give us a lie or they bluff. We can't hire them. So we'll tell you why the answer I gave to Devendra actually worked. The next thing that employers want are people that know what they know and know what they don't know. And I can tell you why. Somebody at Google deleted a $240 billion hedge fund if they made a mistake. You don't want to be responsible for that. Now, someone took the Google Cloud down for the entire day because they didn't understand BGP well enough and misconfigured it. You can't hire those people either. So I hope that makes sense to you. And somebody took Facebook down for basically an entire day because they made a mistake because they didn't understand BGP. So keep that in the back of your mind. They have to be able to, they need you to be able to do the job. They need you to be trustworthy, and they need you to know your limitations, know what you know and know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't know that. The next thing employers want are someone that's energetic, enthusiastic, and passionate about the work. Let's face it, you give me someone with skills that are 9 out of 10, but they're tired and exhausted, and you give me skills of someone's a 7 out of 10, but they want to work and they're motivated and they're strong. I hire that 7 out of 10 every day, as would any other hiring manager, and I'd send them to training. I have a huge training budget as a company. So keep that in the back of your mind. Next, emotionally intelligent people. Chow walks in the room and I work harder. Alonzo works harder. Mark works harder because she makes us all happy. Employers want emotionally intelligent people. What else do employers want? Team players. People that get along well with others. People that will work together. And someone that goes above and beyond. Someone that when you know the chips are down, no matter what it takes, is going to stick around for you. So Devendra asked me a question that I didn't know in my first interview. I said, Devendra, I'm sorry I've not had the opportunity to really learn EIGRP yet or really work with that technology, but I'm highly energetic, I'm highly enthusiastic, and I love technology. Devendra, I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I can find the answers to things that I don't know very quickly. If this was important to you, Devendra, I'd stay up all night, read 1,000 pages a day, lab it up until I was the best EIGRP person on your team. If you want to know my strengths and weaknesses, let's talk about IP multicast video, BGP, and OSPF. What did I do? Did I show Devendra, because he asked me a question, that he can trust me? Yep. I didn't lie to him. Probably the first person all day that didn't lie to him. I've interviewed 6,000 people and over 5,950 people lied to me. And so he knows he can trust me. Did he think that I was safe? Well, Devendra, this is what I know. I'll point you to this, and I don't know this, so I'm being honest about it. Yes, I did. Did I show him energy, enthusiasm, and passion for the work? I sure did. Did I show willingness to go up and beyond, above and beyond, to stay up all night and learn? I sure did. He had no choice but to hire me. So here's the next thing. What does a cloud architect do? And this is where 99% of the people actually go wrong. They learn all the wrong things. A cloud architect is not an engineer. We do not write code. We have nothing to do with DevOps. We have nothing to do with maintenance or sysops or technical support. We are hybrid people. It is a hybrid executive position and a technologist position. Generally speaking, meaning if you work at Amazon, if you work at a Google, if you work at Microsoft, if you work at Oracle, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, Cisco, IBM, Palo Alto, or any company that really is going to pay you and pay you well, you will not be allowed to touch the technology. And the reason is your focus on as an architect is not the tech. You don't care about DevOps tools. You care about optimizing your client's business performance. So I'm going to tell you exactly what we do and the things that go into it. I like to say the architect's job is to design, present, and sell a solution. So what goes into design? What goes into design is learning about the client's vision for the business, where they want to be 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And CEOs of big companies are thinking that far ahead. I then need to understand their business architecture, or how the business operates and how their business processes work. I then need to work with that client to look and analyze those business processes and operations and strategize with them the way we want it to work in the future. Because if I don't know that, we can't even begin to think about the technology. Then I need to bring in a team of people to go evaluate the organization's systems, baseline them, test them, so I can see what they've got. Then, when we know what the organization has, we can start working with that organization to understand their current technology, and we can see their strengths and weaknesses of that technology. We then look and say, okay, so now that we know what those business needs are, and we understand how that business operates, how do we want to design the technology to support the business processes to support the business goals of the future? Many people skip this, and that's why 70% of all cloud architectures fail. 70%. Because people are trying to engineer an architect solution. So that's why architecture is different. So now when we know it's time to design an architecture, here's what we need to do. First thing we need to do is build a team of architects. If you ask David Lithicum and he was Deloitte's chief cloud architect or chief of cloud strategy. So think of the top of thousands of our architects, and I'll tell you the same thing. We've got to go build a team. Now, if we're leading a cloud architecture, there's going to be some networking things we need. So we're going to pop in a network architect. There's going to be some security things we need. We'll pop in a security architect. There's going to be some identity and access management things, and that usually goes to an IAM architect, not a security architect. Now we're going to have some data things. So we might need a big data architect. We may need some AI architects to go with us, some data scientists to go with us. Then we're going to need some deeply technical people to go really get nitty gritty into the tech. And that means we're going to bring in some cloud engineers and DevOps engineers, and they're going to go evaluate that to us. We're going to work together. We're going to lead that team, and we are going to create a strategy. We are going to document that strategy in written form as well as picture form. We're going to go write it up, and then we're going to go to the customers, stakeholders. We're going to get feedback about that architecture and how it's going to impact their business. We'll retune up the architecture again after that with that same architecture team that you built and you led. Now it's time to present that architecture and close the deal. Sell that architecture to the client and move on to your next client. Or if you're at that same company, move on to your next architecture project. That is what we do as architects. Our job is to drive business performance through technology. Our job is not to build it, not to configure it, not sysops, not DevOps, not maintenance, not tech support, none of that. It all goes into that design, present, and sell, like I like to say it. So what happened was there were some ridiculous job descriptions that were out there. And job descriptions were looking at all these weird things. I've never seen an honest job description in 25 years, to be fair. But the cloud architect job descriptions were among the worst. And sadly, people have been looking at them trying to figure it out. So what actually happened is the Gartner, and if you're new to technology, the Gartner group will go out there and they will start evaluating organizations, technology, who's the most innovative cloud, who's the most innovative big data person, who's the most innovative security people. That's the thing. They go and they write the documents. So what they actually did is they asked chief information officers, which are our boss, by the way, and they said, because they're basically the chief architect for the technology organization. So they asked them, when you hire a cloud architect, what do you want? What do you want in them? Because we know what we've seen in certain job descriptions isn't real. You know what they were told? I'll surprise you, but I'll read them to you. It's published in Say Magazine. Chow from my team gave you the link. They said the CIOs, which is our management, says, we would like a cloud architect to lead the cultural change for cloud adoption. That's all the schmoozing, presentations, relationship development, stakeholder management kind of stuff that we need to do. Develop and coordinate a cloud architecture. Well, that's what I was talking about when I said take your team, lead your team, design it as a team. That's the development of the cloud architecture. And then they say create a cloud strategy and coordinate the adoption process. Well, as part of our architectural documents, there's a statement of work. And that relates to the adoption process. You put the time of people that you're going to need, the number of program managers, the number of engineers, what have you, programmers, developers, any of that. You put that in the statement of work. So we're involved in that, the strategic planning piece. Now, they then said, well, here's what we'd like our architects to do on a daily basis. Finding talent with the necessary skills. How do you think I've interviewed over 6,000 people in the last 25 years? Because as an architect, I'm constantly interviewing people to see if they have the skills to be on our team. Assessing applications, software, and hardware. Yeah, we do this all the time. That's when I talked about bringing in a team of engineers to go assess the stuff for you to give a report. Then it said creating a cloud broker team. Well, that's that team that I'm talking about to design the systems. And then they say establish best practices for the cloud across the company. Well, part of what you need to do as your architecture is to communicate and interview the stakeholders, learn their business processes, and work to re-architect with that organization and go socialize that with the stakeholders, and then sell your vision and ideas. That's why I like to call it design, present, and sell. The next thing is selecting cloud providers and vetting third-party services. Do you go AWS, Azure, Google, Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, Dell, Alice Cloud, Alibaba's cloud? Do we go hybrid cloud, hybrid multi-cloud, private cloud, pure multi-cloud versus a hybrid multi-cloud? 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. So it's not like anything going to be in an AWS certification. The next thing is overseeing governance and mitigating risk. That governance involves setting up the team of people that are going to lead that organization of the stakeholders we've worked with. Manage budgets and estimate costs. Sure, we're an executive. We need to figure out what this thing's going to cost. And operate at scale. Well, how do you do this stuff on a large scale basis? So that's what we're doing as architects. Note what you didn't hear there. You heard nothing of DevOps, code, configure, Python, Linux, Bash shell scripting, Terraform. It has nothing to do with what we do as architects. They're other things. So what do you need to do? Now you know you've got the right skills, and we're going to talk about the right skills. And when you've got the right skills, now it's time to build your resume. You can't go build your resume before you have skills, because what happens is you go in an interview and they reject you. And they put a big X next to your name that says don't interview in the future. So you don't want to burn your name. But when it's time to build your resume after you have the skills, and of course, if you were in our training, we would teach you how to build a killer resume. And a lot of that marketing training comes from Alonzo with an MBA in marketing and 30 years marketing exec experience. You know, the key is initially on the top of that resume, you've got to wow them with something they're going to be impressed with. I usually use Mike Gibbs, MS, MBA, CCIE, CISSP, or Google Professional Cloud Architect, because I let my CISSP expire. And I never put more than two to three certifications on there, and there's reasons for that. So if you're with us, we'll teach you. If not, you got to then entice the reader to want to read your resume. And of course, we'll teach our students how to do that. And then you've got to put the things that employers care about on your resume that are related to architecture, not engineering. If I want to have an architect and all you have is code on your resume, I'd say, great. I'll refer you to somebody for a software developer role. But I want to see that your resume looks like an architect. So I'm going to tell you what you actually need to learn now. Now, I'm going to tell you how we do it in our training. And if you're with us, you'll receive all of this. If you want to train on your own and you want to purchase, speech training from somebody for a couple $1,000s, you can do it. And then leadership training from someone else for a couple $1,000s, you can do it. I don't really care. I mean, I'd love to train you and we'll do it better, faster, and cheaper. All I care is that you build an incredible cloud architect career. So I'm going to tell you what we do and how we train our architects, but I will give you the list of skills as well. Now, for the very short time, we're offering you guys a 50% off on July 4th special, so that I can tell you that at that price, our course costs less than 2 days' pay for our average graduates based upon their graduating salaries. So the way we do it is we have 3 live classes per week on Zoom like we're doing right now. Right now, we're doing hardcore cybersecurity training with my students. And that's the phase we're working on right now. But we go through phases to make sure everybody gets everything. We do live training 3 days per week. 2 days per week are related to the technical part of architecture. 1 day per week is related to the actual business side and the digital transformation side of architecture. So you can't get hired without the business skills, no matter how good your tech skills are. So we do 3 live classes per week. We also have 1 to 2 classes per week where we have office hours, and one of our instructors typically will be there, and you can ask any questions about the program during those 2 days live. And that way you've got 5 live touch points, 4 to 5 live touch points with us each week. Now, in between classes, and we'll get to those skills in a minute, what you will do is there'll be a series of videos for you to watch. There'll be some required reading things for you to do. There'll be some labs for you to do. There'll be some architecture presentations for you to do. There'll be some interview type presentations for you to do. And you'll do the work, you'll turn it in, and our team will give you feedback. Like, you can't become an architect for the most part trying to just watch videos. You need to have somebody guide you. So you'll do work and our team will guide you to make sure that you're doing it right and you're learning and getting better. Because if you don't know if it's right, you don't want to keep doing it. Practice makes permanent, meaning if you practice something wrong, you will burn it in your mind to do it wrong forever. Perfect practice makes perfect, but you can't do perfect practice unless you have someone that can guide you perfectly in the first place. So there's that. So you'll be turning in things and you're getting feedback on them. I have to tell you, we have a community as well. While we have a Slack community, we have the biggest community I've possibly ever seen. Whether you're in London, we've got working groups of people. You're Atlanta, we've got working groups of people. If you're in Lagos, Nigeria, we've got working groups of people. If you're in San Jose or San Francisco, we've got working groups. Doesn't matter, pretty much anywhere in the world, we've got working groups of people, and we've got students in every country you could possibly think of, especially large numbers in Europe, the Middle East, India, and Africa. And we've had some wonderful, wonderful successes, and lots of people in Australia, New Zealand, that kind of thing as well, along with the US, Canada, and South America. So we're everywhere. Now, we will have you do labs in our program, and I often feel weird about having people do labs in our program because labs are teaching engineering, not architecture. So I'll tell you why I do it. Sometimes, somewhere along the line, somebody's going to ever ask you if you've touched it. So I have our students do do a bunch of labs on AWS. I have our students do a bunch of labs on Azure. They're basic, they're no big deal. They're the kind of labs anybody else would do. But then I give you the real labs that are going to teach you something. All cloud computing is someone's network and data center. But if you don't understand the network and the data center, you won't know how to move the stuff from the network and the data center to the cloud, or even be able to design anything, because you won't know what the underlying technology is. So we will have you VPN in our data center and work with servers and server virtualization and containers and container orchestration the hard way, so you really learn it. We'll have you set up LAMP stacks. We'll have you set up firewalls. We'll have you set up remote access VPNs. We'll have you set up Active Directory servers so you can truly learn IAM. And we'll actually have you build your own cloud. And why do I have people build their own cloud? Remember what employers look for: energy, enthusiasm, passion for the work, competency, and willingness to go above and beyond. And of course, if you're not with us, you can buy a server for about $1,000 and set it up and build an OpenStack cloud on it yourself. Of course, with us, the servers are included and you don't have to buy it. But when you build the cloud and you have to set up the internal networking and the storage structures and the compute structures, it teaches you how the cloud works. I've been designing clouds for cloud providers for 30 years, almost 30 years now, actually over 25 years now. And I got to tell you, when you know how the cloud works, you know how to architect anything and around it. And that's why we do that. Plus, it's good things for your resume. Now, realize I'm going to cover the non-tech skills first, and I'm going to cover the tech skills next. Why am I covering the non-tech skills first? Because it's 60 to 80% of the job. Sometimes 50 to 80%. It's mostly a business job. Because remember, we are not engineers. Engineers focus on optimizing the technology. Admins focus on how to build it. Architects focus in design. So because our job is design, present, sell, 2/3 of our job is business. So you have to know how to sell. If you want to see the differences between an architect that can sell and not sell, afterwards ask me in the questions, and I will show you architect roles like a principal architect role that have a pay range of say $394,000 to $700,000 a year. And that's based upon how good you are at sales, how good you are at bringing revenue, et cetera, coming in. The next thing that you need to have, and because you're going to have to sell stakeholders, you're going to have to sell your architecture to the client. If you don't sell your architecture to the client, it doesn't go anywhere, because all we do is paper. You're going to have stellar communication skills. So if you're with us, great, we'll work on it. If you're not with us, go find somebody that optimizes communication skills for executives. The next thing you're going to need is presentation skills. You know where most people fail their architect interviews? The presentation, which actually comes where you present to a panel. So if you're not with us, there's plenty of good speech courses you can take. Speech Easy runs a good course. They're about $3,000 for the week, which is double the cost of our program while it's on sale. But I can tell you, if you don't learn it from us, go learn it from them or someone equally good. invest in that because it can have a $50,000 to $100,000 difference in your annual salary, and you won't get hired without it. So please don't be cheap on yourselves. Invest in yourselves. You're the best investments in the world. You're also going to need executive writing skills because we don't write for engineers. I mean, we do that too, but we have to write for executives. Executives actually sign the purchase order. So we have to learn the business from the executives and have to communicate to them. So the next thing that you need to have is leadership skills. You're going to build an architecture team of 15 to 50 people and have to lead them for 6 to 12 months. And as soon as that architecture is over, you're going to have to find another team and lead that team. Now, they don't work for you, but they work for you. So you have to be an extremely good leader to have people want to follow you and want to work with you. But we teach these skills, of course. So the next thing that you need to have is something called executive presence. If Alonzo's the chief information officer, and I walk into Alonzo's office, hi, Alonzo, it's Mike. I'm the Cisco distinguished architect. I've got 25 years experience. Alonzo doesn't care. If I walk into Alonzo's office and say, hi, Alonzo, it's Mike. It's good to see you today. This is good to see you too. And I say, Alonzo, I've led a team now of 50 of the best architects in the entire world. We evaluated your business performance, your current business challenges, your business processes. Together, we put together a package that I believe would increase your revenue by about 3% annually. We can also decrease your operating costs because we found some inefficiencies in these processes, which we can use technology to solve, by about 32%. All in all, we think we can come up with about $800 million of business value. And Alonzo asked what our architecture costs, and I say 200 million, and he's thrilled. So, that's the difference. You've got to have that executive presence. So we teach it to you. Honestly, Cisco spent about $20,000 teaching me executive presence, but it's a critical skill. So if you don't learn it from us, get coaching and training somewhere. You also need to understand business. Why? Architects design systems to optimize business performance. If you don't know business, what are you optimizing? That would be like a doctor that doesn't know medicine. You just can't do it. So if you're not with us, get some business school training, go to MBA, get an MBA, or get it from somewhere, please. The next thing is negotiation skills. Let me tell you, whether you're negotiating an offer or you're negotiating with stakeholders or you're negotiating with the leadership that's going to purchase your thing, or you're negotiating with other architects or other business leaders because the change you want to make helps this department, but not this department, you'll be negotiating every day as an architect. So of course we teach negotiation skills. You also need to know how to build a business case. I showed Alonzo that I had a $200 million solution to his $800 million problem. And it's basically like, I'm paying him money to do business with me by buying my stuff. Because you're going to have to show the client that the value to the business of whatever your solution is greater than its cost. Otherwise, you won't sell it. When people say this customer has no budget, and then they're like, well, I'll go talk to them. And all of a sudden they have a budget to buy whatever they need, is because I connected the dots as an expert architect to how my technology will solve their business problem. The other teams walked in there and they said, our technology is this, it's cool, it's fast, it's innovative. And the CEO says, I don't care at all about tech. I only care what it does for my business. So those are the business things you need. We train them all, but if you're not with us, go learn them somewhere. Unfortunately, they're expensive skills to learn if you're not with us, but please learn them. It'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars difference in your annual salary, and it'll be the ability to get hired versus not get hired. Next, now you need the technical skills. What are these technical skills? Well, you have to understand in today's world, the private cloud, because it's cheapest and highest performance, the hybrid cloud, because it allows the cheapest, highest performance compute, along with the scalability and agility of the cloud, multi-cloud, because let's face it, each cloud provider has their specialty and you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So in order to understand that, you need to understand the network and the data center, because all cloud computing is someone else's network and data center. So of course we teach AWS, Azure, OpenStack. Sometimes we do architectures on Google, etc. Or private data center designs too. We work on that as well because we have to make sure our clients, our graduates are the best in the world. So you'll need to understand network, data center, and cloud. So what does it goes into that? On the networking side, it's my favorite routing protocol, BGP. It's also route interior gateway protocols for our private clouds, things like OSPF. We also have to understand, how to take a CIDR block or create a CIDR block and subnet it down, and also where to route summarize and route aggregate our things. So subnetting and supernetting. We have to understand all forms of switching. Things like VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, etc. And of course, we teach that absolutely as well. You will need to understand the different forms of network address translation and not just going to the internet. There's many use cases for businesses, like when one business buys another business, or when you're communicating to one VPC and another VPC and they're using different addresses, or lots of reasons you need to learn all the forms of NAT. Of course, we'll teach it to you. You also need to understand what is the right technology to connect you to the cloud and the clouds to each other. So we'll teach you the route WAN technology selection, like private lines and when and where to use them. Traditional VPNs like IPsec VPNs and when and where to use them. SD-WAN environments, SASE environments. So we'll teach you all that. We will also teach you about servers and server virtualization, and you're going to work with them too. And that is the basis of everything on the cloud. A virtual machine doesn't matter whether it's VMware in the data center, an EC2 instance, an Azure virtual machine, a Google Compute Engine instance, an Oracle virtual machine. It's the same technology. So we'll teach you that technology so you know all clouds. We will teach you about containers, and you'll build some too. We'll get you involved in container orchestration so you understand how that works. We'll teach you about load balancers and proxies and reverse proxies because that's so critical. We will teach you all about the storage area and networks that you need to be familiar with, the business applications that you can use to drive business performance. We'll teach you heavy duty security. Now, everybody that we have in our program gets CISSP level and then some level security training. And that's why so many of my graduates actually become security architects straight out of our program. R, who works at an agency that I can't give his entire name, recently got hired as a security architect based upon this. Q got hired as a security analyst and just got offered within a few months of her training. And right after this, just got an architect job. He's still negotiating it, so I can't give his full name right now. Delroy Back got his first cybersecurity architect job, and it was his first tech job. So keeping in mind, we go very deep in security. Not only will we talk about the basic cloud stuff, we'll get involved in next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS system designs, demilitarized zone, remote access design, and multi-cloud design. So that's going to be what we cover. All those things that you need to be a great cloud architect. We will also get you certified. And here's the thing. No certification teaches you architecture. I'm going to be honest with you right there. An AWS solution architect professional teaches you the name of a service, which you can't use with your clients because they don't want to understand it. You use the real term, the data center term, and it teaches you how to configure that service, which architects don't do. But a certification will get you an interview, and the training will get you hired. Getting interviews and not getting hired is not helpful. So here's what we do. We will train you in either the Azure Solutions Architect Expert or AWS Solutions Architect Professional. We will train you in TOGAF 10. And why TOGAF 10? It's an architecture framework that's vendor neutral. And we typically provide our students training in CISSP as well. In fact, we're doing that right now. And that gives their students probably the 3 best certifications for generating interviews. And we give you the skills to get hired. So we obviously will teach you how to build your resume. We'll teach you how to even interview, and we'll teach you how to negotiate a higher salary. So come train with us, build your architecture career, and take advantage of our 24-hour 50% off pre-sale of the July 4th content. Now, I'm open to answering a lot of questions. I love answering questions. It can be questions about our course, questions about your career, want to see if you're ready and you want a mini interview. I don't care. Anything the GoCloud team can do to actually help you build the best architecture career.
That's great, Mike. Actually, we've got a few questions ahead of us already. So I'd like to start with Sridhara. And they're asking, hello, I've read a paper that you say that architects do not do DevOps. Could you please explain why one should not mix both?
Yes. So here's what happens when you try to learn both. You won't know anything and anything well. Have you ever seen an Olympian that plays in 2 sports? No, because they divert their focus from their career and they become not good enough at either to win. So I got to tell you, after interviewing 6,000 people in my career, Here's how hard it is to interview an architect. I interview 500 people, and not a single one will be able to do it. They'll know how to code, they'll know DevOps, they'll know SysOps, they'll know everything other than architecture. So while if you were investing your time in architecture, for example, where would you be learning how to build a business case? Where would you be investing your time looking at an organization's weighted average cost of capital and how you would parlay that in a lease versus finance to build a private cloud versus using the OpEx model on the public cloud? Because you can make your data center purchase CapEx or OpEx. What's their capital structure like? That's what you need to be able to do as an architect. If you're focusing on DevOps, will you be learning business transformation? But I'll tell you who will be learning business transformation, the architects that want to be distinguished architects and principal architects. If you're busy focusing on the technology, you're not focusing on your client's strategy. So you can split your focus and be equally bad at everything. And that's realistically speaking what hobbyists do. They got a bunch of hobbies and they spread it, and then you find experts. So I was a principal architect in less than 2 years. And why am I want to show you this? Because when I became an architect, many years ago, I actually was with a buddy of mine, and he and I took the exact opposite strategy. He said, Mike, you're focused on your CCIE. He said, instead of getting a CCIE, I'm going to get 3 different CCNPs. After I do that, I'm going to get a security certification or 2. And he did, got certified in Linux. I mean, this guy got every single certification you could possibly imagine. And I said, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be an expert in networking, and I am going to put 100% of my time, effort, money, and focus into networking. I was a principal architect in less than 2 years. My friend never made it that far. Now, my friend knows more about other technologies than I will ever know, but he can't get hired as an architect and be a great architect because he knows everything other than architecture. So I was a principal architect in less than 2 years. And these salaries actually look a little low to me for some of the principal architects that I know. But this is a principal architect at Google and their earnings range. You can see it is straight from Glassdoor. It's just a printout. The average range is between 394 and 677, with that midpoint of 508. The people that earn the least on the bottom have the least business acumen and the least executive presence. The people at the top have the most business transformation skills and are doing such a good job that people keep buying from them. So you might say Google pays well, but let's pick Microsoft. They're not known to be the highest paying company in the world, but they treat their employees incredibly well. People stick around forever. And here you go. Here's a principal architect job at Microsoft. Pays on average $380 a year with a pay range of $300 to $495. And the higher end is obviously related to people that can sell more. So if you focus your time in DevOps, are you going to learn how to close $1 billion deal? And I've done them. Or are you going to be focused on DevOps? Which do you think is going to serve you more, to go to your manager at the end of the year and say, I've closed $200 million of architectures this year with the account team, or I have a new DevOps certification? And the manager says, great, but you can't sell. That's why. And after performance optimizing people for years, I'd say the biggest challenge is when people try to go wide instead of going deep. And then we interview them and they just don't have the substance, and we need substance. That's the reason.
Couldn't have said it better, Mike. Mark, do you have anything to contribute?
Yeah, I wanted to add, for those that, let's say you already have these skills, we don't want to dissuade you telling you that you can't become an architect.
No.
But you do definitely want to understand that the focus is going to be different when it comes to being a DevOps engineer compared to being an architect or cloud architect. One of them is going to focus on aligning themselves to the business itself, while the other one is going to focus on the operational, the implementation side of things. So you'll have to understand those type of differences. Now, what you could do though, and this is going to aid you as an architect itself, you can learn some concepts that are associated when it comes with DevOps. For example, think about infrastructure as code. Well, what about containerization and orchestration of those systems? What about, let's think about automation. Would us understanding the high-level concept of these things help with architectural decisions? They definitely would, right? I don't have to understand the actual coding aspects or the
Right.
actual scripting aspects to allow myself to automate my systems.
Right.
But being able to build a highly available, highly resilient, highly redundant network that's also going to serve the engineers later on, because we're always going to have engineers, I need to understand at least some architectural concepts when it comes to automation. Other things you might want to think about is it's in the cloud. Cloud native applications is a thing. I'll need to understand some type of principles and concepts that are associated with the concept of being able to shift my on-premise applications into the cloud. And guess what? With that comes understanding what are the architectural decisions that I might have to suggest to be able to take a application that was generally just native to an on-premise solution and be able to migrate it to make it a cloud native solution. So those are the things where you can take some of those technical aspects that you might already know and apply them towards the architectural and the business decisions. So the alignment on how you're going to use it is going to be different. Now, I'm going to give you briefly just a small example of, for example, when I was working for a network operator or service provider, where I would have to talk to the customer and I would find out the needs of the customer. Now, the customer already was pre-screened, right, through sales. It would eventually come to me. And then depending on at what stage we would be at, I would either help close the sale or I would look at the requirements that the customer had and figure out, based on the solutions that we have available, how can we solve the customer's business needs? So as you can imagine, we offered collaboration solutions such as voice and video over IP. We offered security solutions. Now, if a customer needed security solution from me, did I necessarily need to know how to implement or even basically turn up a cluster of active and standby firewall? Did I need to know that? Not necessarily. I didn't need to know the configuration aspects of it, but I do need to know that, number one, that this is an option. This is something that we offer. What are the cons and the pros of being able to have such a design in place? Then I needed to understand, if this is something that the customer wanted, how does that impact potentially the rest of the design and the solution that we're going to present to the customer? How does it impact if the customer required voice over IP? How does that interact with the actual security solution? And then those two solutions, how do they interact with the actual SD-WAN solution, right? So there's little things from that perspective that you as a designer, as an architect, have to keep in mind. I don't necessarily have the time now to dive deep into all the different configurations aspect. Now, will it be beneficial to me to understand that voice over IP, at least the way we offer it, uses SIP as the actual session protocol to be able to negotiate a phone call? Would that be beneficial? Sure. Did I have to know that it uses the session discovery protocol to set up the RTP mappings, the real-time protocol mappings? Not necessarily, but I know it because I've done it before. But in an architectural design, it does me nothing, no good. But at least knowing what protocols I'm using, now I can think about it. If we have a firewall solution in place, does that potentially mean, as the designer, that I may have to consider how my sessions for the phone calls are going to go into the firewall and how are they going to be treated? From the inside out, no problem. I'm in a trusted zone. I'm in a secure network. But how would I handle it if the initiation comes from the outside? Does the firewall need to know about that? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, again, I don't need to know the implementation details. That's what I have the security engineer for. I'll ask him those details. So from that perspective, some things can truly help you become a better architect, but I always stress this. What is it that you are focusing on? Are you focusing on being the subject matter expert at this one particular technology? Or are you aligning yourself to the customer and their business needs, helping them be successful, not the protocol? The protocol is supposed to help you be successful.
Couldn't have said it
And
better.
Mark,
Go ahead, Mike, please.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but here's another key takeaway from Mark's son, because he actually gave you some gold. When he gave the example of knowing whether the firewall needs to allow certain things or will the firewall have state, he was thinking about how the firewall works and how the SIP protocol works. You could be configuring firewalls all day long and configuring SIP trunks all day long and still not know how SIP works. That's the big thing. When I interview people, and I've interviewed thousands, and they all know how to click, like on the keyboard in the CLI. And then I say, okay, I agree. You've configured 500 EC2 instances this week. Now, talk to me about the CPU. Talk to me about the number of cores in there. Talk to me about the cache RAM on that CPU and how it's going to impact its performance. Talk to me about the type of DRAM and the PCIe bus and what kind of speed that will relate to what they're getting out of their GPUs that are in that virtual machine. And the person goes, huh? Well, see, we architects need to know that. So when I talked about teaching these things, it's how it works. And you can't learn how it works by doing. It's like a doctor. They have to learn normal anatomy. They have to learn the way the body works. It's not memorizing stuff. It's understanding how the circulatory system works or how the neurological system works. When you're going to give drugs, it's going to be to modify that normal. Well, anytime we make a change as an architect, it changes everything for the business. So that's the key. We need to learn how it works, not how to do it. So Mark gave you that too as well. I wanted you guys to make sure that you got that.
Outstanding responses, gentlemen. The next question is going to be from Suk. They're asking, can you elaborate on the security aspect? If I'm interested in a cybersecurity field, how can that be related to the architectural profile, and what things do I need to prep or lean into that role?
Well, so you said cybersecurity field, so I need some information. Do you want to be an architect, like a security architect where you design a system? Do you want to be a security engineer that builds the systems? Or do you want to be an ethical hacker that breaks into systems and gives that report to the architect so the architect knows how to design them? We have to figure that one out first. So please answer that question. And then we can go there, because you will need completely different training for each role.
Yeah, and also something that you can sort of look forward to. If you do have a disposition towards a particular, let's say, discipline such as security, networking, maybe you catch your fancy with application design. It's okay to be able to specialize in those things. But you also need to understand, again, holistically, there is more to it than just that one specific piece. For example, in the that I gave you in regards to when, I had a customer come to me and we got to bring solutions. So you understand the solution was actually SD-WAN based, software-defined networking. The security, the voice over IP, the applications, all of that gets tagged onto that particular solution that we were presenting, which means that no matter if I'm trying to secure a device, if I'm trying to secure an application, no matter if I have some type of artificial intelligence or large language model that runs on top of this infrastructure, security is always going to be a key, especially when it comes to your sensitive data. So from that perspective, as an architect, you always are going to keep in mind security, just like you're going to keep in mind how are my applications going to be used in the infrastructure that I collaborate with a network architect, sometimes you even have infrastructure architects. How is that going to run? So the security, I want you to keep security and the other term in mind that it's pervasive, meaning it is integrated into every aspect of a design that you're going to be presenting and eventually selling to a customer. So again, cybersecurity architects or security architects are always going to be needed, and you're going to be working within a team of other architects, such as either an enterprise architect, which is going to probably sit at the top, and they're going to have direct access to the C-suite. And then you're going to be working with cloud architects because of the actual microservices, including Kubernetes, containerization. You're going to have to work on those things, right, to be able to work on cloud native. You have databases. And then eventually, guess what? You're also going to have other type of architects. You're going to have network architects, application architects. Pick your fancy on what you like. But from that perspective, just understand security. It's involved in every step of the way. And that's actually one of those really red hot fields right now, or domains that we've been talking about on how everybody's trying to figure out with traffic going north, south, meaning from your premise to the data center, and then within your data center from east to west. How do we secure that? And then how do we secure that when it goes from one cloud service provider and it stretches across multiple cloud service providers? Now we have a multi-cloud hybrid kind of design. How does security impact that type of design? So security is everywhere. So just keep that in mind. It's a very good field to get into.
And the reason I ask, which field, because then we can't answer it, is if you want to be a cloud architect, you have to have good security knowledge, because if you don't have it, your systems will be hacked. and they won't be survive. Now, if you're a security architect, and we train lots of cloud security architects and security architects in our cloud architect program, because we have a security track as well as part of that. You know, it's your ability to walk into a client and be able to assess the risk, financial risk, non-financial risk, be able to quantify those, be able to help create what's called a business impact analysis to see what their security risks are. And then when we're done with that, then it's about, as a security architect, working with the organization's executives to create a strategy around security and to create a security policy. It's about determining how you keep your data secure, making sure your data has integrity, making sure your data that you don't have any type of data loss. It's about making sure that you've got an end-to-end strategy to determine that who things are or who they claim to be, what they're allowed to do, and keeping track of what they actually are. It's designing your demilitarized zones, for example, what you're trying to talk about. It's designing your encryption strategy, your system hardening strategy. It's determining the level of training that people need in, say, anti-phishing, anti-malware, anti-social engineering campaigns. That's security architect work. Security engineer work, by comparison, is completely focused on how do I set up those firewalls? How do I configure those IDS IPS systems? How do I configure the DLSP systems? So you can see the architect needs one set of skills, the engineer needs a completely different one. Now, how about the offensive security people, the penetration testers? They have to be experts with hacking and hacking tools like Kali Linux, because they're going to be breaking into systems and giving a report. And the architect will take that report and go, oh, okay, now we know what we need. We create a new design to fix it. So that's why we need to know your security things. The security architect is a very good role. We train lots of them. And we train a lot of people for cloud architect roles. And because we're so good at security, we actually get a lot of them hired as security architects.
Yeah, and so you mentioned you're leaning towards end-to-end system design for business. Again,
That's cloud
systems
architect.
system needs to be secure, right, from all
Yep.
aspects of it. As a matter of fact, what you'll many times see, this is very common within data centers, of course, enterprise, and guess what? Cloud is nothing different. It is a virtualized way of selling infrastructure, right, or renting infrastructure. So what you'll notice, there's going to be choke points built in, or modularity. That's generally what's done. It provides us with isolation, which you'll need anyway, because you're multi-tenancies, meaning you have more than one person actually sharing that particular resource. So you're going to need to know, how does my actual security design, when it comes to the security itself, and then my system design, impact the rest of the actual architecture? So once again, you'll notice that security is so interwoven, irregardless if you're just working on the network aspect of a cloud service provider, or if you're working on the application or even the databases. Think about it. Databases need security, right? If we think about storage, which database is eventually going to be accessing, we'll have to think about it. If we're actually querying the information from actual storage, that storage needs to be secured as well. Are we going to be securing it by having it encrypted while it's at rest, meaning it's not being accessed? And then how are we going to secure it also when it's being queried, meaning we're getting one of those get posts, right? When we're trying to actually retrieve the information. That's where we might need encryption, meaning confidentiality, when this traffic is actually, or the data is moving. So irregardless of what it is that you fancy or what you really like doing, security, you can't go wrong with it. But there's many different aspects, and even within those finite aspects, you can specialize in. So you're really going to have to dig deep within the course that we provide, the career development course in general. That's where we help you figure out, what is it that you truly want to do? What is it that you like? Do you really want to do security in all its finite details? Or do you prefer to go a little bit more higher level? Maybe just cloud architect, which is not going to dive as deep when it comes to the security, but you still will need to know it. What about either enterprise architecture or even being an artificial architect, right? The Gen AI architect program that we have. In either case, security will hit them all. So feel free to ask more questions. There's always more information, of course, on the website, but while you have us here, go ahead and ask and we'll try to answer them for you.
Wonderful, gentlemen. The next question is going to be from Bob. Is there a specific specialty role as solely focused on a cloud security architect role, or is that too niche for the initial position?
So Bob Brass, we have a lot of students whose first job as a cloud security architect after our training. We have some people whose first job is a solution architect. We have some people like Wallace Agana, whose first job out of our program was an enterprise architect. and he was a sales rep, or Jermaine Shofton, who was selling landscaping gear before we met him. But he got hired as a enterprise architect. I think it was SMHC, but he had a couple of big offers from a lot of firms prior to that. That was the one that he really was there. So it really doesn't matter. Lots of people get their first job as a security architect. Lots of people get there. The key is it goes back to this, being so good at what you do that they can look past you and you can wow them on that interview. But yeah, totally possible as a security architect.
The next question is going to be from Chris. Is that to say a cloud architect is an advanced business analyst with a good blend of soft skills and good knowledge of the cloud, network principles, and human resource management?
No. So a cloud architect is an executive position. So here's the way businesses look at people. The analysts are a bunch of number crunchers that do stuff. The executives are the people that take the results of the number crunchers' work and make decisions. So I think a business analyst is a great job for many people, and it's a great place where people can learn stuff. The business analysts that get promoted into bigger roles at that executive level, that is what an architect is. And it's really an architect executive, and that's why you need such executive skills. That's why I showed you, there are a whole lot of architect jobs, and this is just a principal architect job. I can show you chief architect roles that pay $1 million plus a year. But what makes you an executive is having those executive skills. You don't resort into being that more techie architect. And I got to tell you, I started my career as that techie architect until I had a manager that pulled me off. They called it a systems engineer, but it was all design, present, and sell for clients. And my manager found me falling asleep in a corporate sponsored CISSP boot camp. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he walked him to his room and he says, Mike, he said, what are you doing in the CISSP boot camp other than the fact that we forced you all to get CISSP certified? And I actually enjoyed the boot camp, but that's neither here nor there, but I was tired. And he said, Mike, you want to know and this is back in 2000. He said, you want to know the difference between a $150,000 sales engineer like you and a real $300,000 a year enterprise architect? And I was like, please tell me. And he said, Mike, it's about the impact you make on your client's business, which means you need to know business. He said, it's about your leadership skills. Can you lead the team of people to drive you success? Can you lead the client into what's good for their business? Can you look at their people, their processes, and technology? Can you close bigger deals for us? I went, oh. And he said, you want to go to leadership training? And I said, yes. He said, you want to go to executive training? And I said, yes. About a year and a half later, I had less than that. I actually had that big job. And that was 20 years ago when that was worth 2 to 3 times more than it was today. So you can't see it as an analyst. You have to see it as an executive. Your job is to take the kind of results of your tech analysts, which are your engineers, and business analysts, and take that, put it together, and design something on it. That's why this is such a good role.
Outstanding, gentlemen. The next question is going to be back to Bob. Could we touch on the difference between the programs Go Cloud Careers offers, such as the Enterprise Architect, Cloud Architect, and Generative AI development programs?
Absolutely. The Generative AI Architect program is to create generative AI architects. It is a specialist position focused on generative AI. And what does a generative AI architect do? They don't code, they don't configure, they design, present, and sell systems with generative AI to optimize business performance. That course is also taught 3 days per week. For our generative AI architect person, we actually chose David Lithicum to teach that. And I got to tell you, love working with David, and here's why I chose David. I've only been working with AI systems since 2000, but David's been working with AI systems since the late 1980s. So I wanted somebody with that level of experience. Since David was Deloitte's chief of cloud strategy, pretty much every architecture he worked on for the last decade had a lot of AI capabilities in it. So I looked at it and said, David, would you like to work with us? And he respects what we do. We respect him. So he teaches that. Generative AI focused on AI. 2 classes with David and 1 class with me or the rest of my team on the business skills. The cloud architect program is focused on developing cloud architects. Now, in this program, we develop security architects with the cloud security architect track, but it's predominantly a generic cloud architect program with people having the ability to specialize more on the networking side or the security side, which are 2 other specialty careers in the cloud architect range. Now we have the enterprise architect course, which honestly is very special. And I'll tell you why. The enterprise architect is the ultimate of the executive roles. You'll often see the enterprise architect be considered the chief architect for the business. And that's really an architect like me that's got lots of executive skills, lots of business skills. To put it into context, the good enterprise architects I know were earning $250,000 about 25 years ago. So you can think about what that is today. At big companies like Cisco's and IBM's, they're very, very well paid. And most enterprise architects typically lack tech skills because it is such a business role. In our enterprise architecture program, we don't have that problem because we have enterprise architect training, and we also put our enterprise architect students in our cloud architect training. And that way they get the tech knowledge from the cloud architect program, the regular architect knowledge from the cloud architect program, and then the special enterprise architecture functions in the enterprise architecture program. So I'm very proud of that program. It's one of our best, honestly. For the cloud and enterprise architect, that is just the perfect program. The AI program is perfect for AI, and our generic cloud architect program is focused on people that want to be great architects. If you have any more questions, let me know.
The next question is going to be from Belinda, gentlemen. I want to ask, please, about working on getting the AWS certification and how it can help me to be a better cloud architect.
Okay, so let's talk about the AWS certification. Well, here's what they're going to teach in the AWS certification: the name of an AWS service and how to configure that service. So as architects, we don't configure that service. Would I still tell you to get the AWS certification? Yes, because it will help you get an interview, Belinda. And now it's just learning the right skills that you need to be an architect. And getting an interview is always a help. So if Alonzo is my chief information officer, and I want to talk to him about my moving his 15,000 virtual machines to AWS EC2 instances, Alonzo's going to laugh me out of the room. But if I tell Alonzo that in this lift and shift migration, we're going to take his 1,500 virtual machines and we're going to migrate them to the cloud because he's currently running at 50% capacity on utilization, we're only going to run, say, 30 to 50% of them full time, and then we'll auto scale out the rest. So he can basically pay for 50% of his compute and then add the additional capacity when it's needed to similar sized virtual machines. Alonzo's going to be very happy. When Alonzo tells me he's got 3 petabytes of object storage, and I say, guess what, Alonzo? I can move your 3 petabytes of object storage to the cloud. He's happy. We're speaking the same language. We're communicating in the same thing. Now, if I talk about S3 and its features, Alonzo doesn't care. He doesn't even know what S3 is, but he knows he needs object storage in the cloud. He's an executive, and he's the person with the checkbook. So unfortunately, you will learn the name of the service and how to configure that. So Belinda, if you don't have resources for training, what you can do is this: is you go through the AWS certification and you see that, oh, this is an EC2 instance. Learn that that is a virtual machine, and then go out there and learn about virtual machines. Go to the VMware website and read about the VMware hypervisor and how it works. Go to the Linux KVM and QEMU website and learn about their hypervisors and how it works. Look at how the hypervisor manages memory. Look at how you can potentially push a PCI card into a virtual machine with things like PCI pass-through. And then you'll know things like single root IO virtualization, which they have on clouds for better performance. You'll understand how a GPU-based virtual machine works, which you're going to need for your artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning kind of environments, and do that. Now, when they try to teach you about elastic block storage, which has basically, hey, it's block storage and here's the speeds and feeds, fine, you can put that in a chart. It serves you no other purpose as an architect, but you need to realize that block storage is slow, not fast like they teach you in the certification. So what are the workarounds to the slow block storage? What do you do when you need 3 million IOPS, which is really no big deal in the data center, but it's near impossible on the cloud without some workarounds? If you understand block storage area networks, it doesn't matter whether it's an Azure managed disk, block storage in a VMware, block storage in a Nutanix cloud, block storage in an OpenStack cloud, because it's the same block storage. Same thing for object storage, block storage. Now, when it comes to relational databases, learn a lot about relational databases. Learn a lot about MySQL. Learn a lot about MariaDB. Learn a lot about Postgres. Learn a lot about the Oracle database, which is most of what enterprises are going to use. Learn about those Microsoft SQL databases. Guess what? Those are what you're going to be using. Can I use Amazon Aurora? Not really. Why can't I use Amazon Aurora or Amazon DynamoDB? Because 98% of organizations are multi-cloud and they're proprietary, so I can't use them in the first place. So what you actually have to learn is the underlying technology that you'll learn and how that technology works, Belinda, and how that will be applied together. For example, how would you design your demilitarized zone so that your web servers are secure and people can't break into your internal systems? What goes into that? So I kind of hope that makes sort of sense to you. So you can use it as a framework for things to learn. Just realize what you're going to be taught in that certification has nothing to do with what we do. But if you use that as a framework, and when they start talking about their automated security assessment service, now start looking at what people do industrially. What are the industrial SIEM packages? What are industrial data loss prevention? How does, you've got a direct connection. Okay, what is a direct connection? What is a VLAN? What is a .1Q tag? Why do we need the .1Q tag? Do we need encryption on this? If so, how does IPsec work? So what you really need to do is go from what they teach you, which is how to, and learn what is the tech, how does the technology work, and how would you apply the technology together.
And something else, Belinda, that potentially could help you is, let's say you're not part of the program yet. The YouTube channel from Go Cloud Careers actually has a lot of resources that you can take advantage of. Number one, it has already recordings of previous AWS bootcamps that we have done that go through the actual associate and professional certification from Amazon. We also have the equivalents when it comes to Azure, but focusing on AWS, you can go through it. And what Mike and the rest of the team have done so eloquently in that type of bootcamp environment is giving you a high-level overview of what the fundamental aspect of the technology is. So you're not starting from zero, because many times when people, they start heading towards the idea of certification, especially for one of these cloud service providers, they kind of miss this little important detail when they look at the exam guide that generally says that you should have an X amount of years of experience within a particular technology. And the reason they say that is they're not going to explain to you the fundamentals of a data center. They're not going to explain to you the fundamentals when it comes to what a virtual machine is, what compute is, what storage is, what the different aspects of these domains are. Like with storage, what are you going to pick? There's different block storages, right? There's fiber channel or Ethernet when we think about an actual medium on how you can transfer traffic. What about something like iSCSI, right? Those are technologies within the storage area. Those things are not explained with the cloud service providers. In the free resources you have available through YouTube, though, that we provide, you get some high-level overview of it. And then within the actual program, the Cloud Career Development Program, that's where we go more in depth. But we're going to build up the understanding of what this technology is, so that by the time you actually get to doing the certification, not only do you understand what the technology is, you also understand its use case. And guess what? Understanding those pieces will make the certification a lot easier, because you're not dependent anymore on these marketing gimmicks. You're just doing a translation. What is a EC2 instance? It's a virtual machine. That's all you need to know. You already understand what a virtual machine is, at least from a technology standpoint, and why you would use it. So now you're tagging on to already understanding that you have. Think of it like having connections in your brain of all this different understanding that you have, and you're simply attaching it to something you already know. And that's going to make the learning process a lot easier. So take advantage, if you haven't joined the program yet, at least from the free resources that you have on YouTube. And once you join the program, you'll see for yourself, there's going to be a wonderful introduction to technology section, which highlights it. And during the live classes, that's where you get the real application of the actual architectural decisions that can be made based on the technology that is being used in the cloud. And I guarantee you, taking the exams is going to be a breeze once you have that type of understanding.
Thank you for that clarity, gentlemen. The next question again is from Bob. Mike, if you have some exposure, but not fully understanding some of the technical knowledge that you discussed, should you show up to your program with a specific baseline knowledge to get the most out of the development programs?
No, I want to take you where you are with as least number of bad habits than you will possibly pick up along the way. I start everyone at ground zero, and here's the reason why. You give me a great software developer, they know a lot about software development. And then I ask them about how the processor works on their server that they're using to compile code, and they can't answer it. They also can't answer the way the network works. They can't also ask how the security works. You ask an enterprise architect like me about how to code, and I'll say, "Oh, I'm an architect. I've never coded in 25 years." Now but they know all that world, which I don't know. You give me a security engineer, and I'll show you someone that doesn't know how to lock down the systems or create the design because they know security engineering. So it doesn't matter where you come from. We start everyone at ground zero. And that's why we're so good at getting people hired. And that's why, when Jeffrey West, who was a geologist doing geospatial imaging, not a tech job, came to us, we got him hired as a solution architect with basically no certifications at Calian because we trained him right. And that's really the key, is having the right skills. That's why Pierre Dassault, who came to us, who was working on on sailboats, and we got him a solution architect job at LeaseWeb. It's how Noah Parker, who was a social worker, got his first architect job at Ahead. It's the way Vladimir, who was 24 years old in college, got hired by North Highland. It's because we assume that everybody comes to us fresh, and we start everybody from the beginning, and we build them up. Same way, if you joined an elite military unit, they'd start everybody out at boot camp and make them all go through the same training. By doing this, you're in the trenches, you're building relationships with our other architects. I can all but guarantee your fundamentals are going to be super strong. And when you've got strong fundamentals and the technology changes, guess what? It's nothing, because the new technology is just an old version of the old technology. And when you've got strong fundamentals and you go on an interview and someone asks you a question that you haven't prepared for, you have the knowledge in your head to think about it and create a document. So I assume everybody has zero knowledge. Here's the thing, Bass, the average architect earns about $1,000 a day. I can get you more knowledgeable than you could on your own, about 10 times faster. So if you tried to spend a couple months trying to learn it, and you spent 3 months trying to do that, on average, you lost about $60,000 of architect pay. We'll put minus whatever you're earning. So I'd rather just train you and do it our way, give you our fundamentals, and get you great.
Yeah, and just to clarify briefly, when Mike says do it our way, he means that there really isn't a architectural certification out there, because many people do ask that. There is no type of official training from any kind of vendor in regards to what does architecture or this design really entail. So what we found out, and from my personal experience, it has been the same case. Mike's been in engineering a little bit less than I have, so I've had a few more years to accumulate that type of understanding. But when you start developing a particular mindset, a way of thinking about things, when you're introduced into something new, regardless if it's tech, just think about an opposite view of things. We become a little resistant to that because we don't understand it.
Yeah.
What we understand makes sense to us, and we tend to fall back on that. So what has to happen is, if you already have a baseline understanding of something, and let's say it's more towards the implementation or the operations side, which would be engineering or administration work, you're going to be thinking from a technology perspective at the bottom. That's where your focus is going to be on. And as an architect, you need to go to the top of it, because we now need to look at the business requirements and how we align technology, which is at the bottom, with the actual business requirements at the top. We consider that a top-down approach.
Yeah.
That's what you'll need. And that's the mindset that is required. That's why, generally speaking, that people that have some type of sales experience, that have retail experience, customer service or customer experience, no pun intended, but they generally are not already watered down by other type of thinking when it comes to technology. They tend to easier kind of grasp the actual top-down approach, because that's already something that kind of makes sense to them. When you're a little bit more on the engineering side, it just takes a little bit extra work to just change your mindset on that. But be assured of this, at least from a technology standpoint, what understanding you already have is not wasted.
No.
You simply just have to change your focus from regarding the implementation or the operation to how do I now architect or design this solution? How does it apply to my constraints that I might have based on finances, maybe type of current infrastructure? It could be something completely different, but whatever it is, you're now looking up towards what are my business requirements? How do I need to match them? And that's why we say there needs to be generally retraining for people with baseline understanding compared to those who don't have it. But on either end, we're just talking a little bit extra time, but you will succeed either way if you stick to the program. Alonso has this wonderful saying said that if the program works, if you work. So you're going to have to put some time and effort into doing the work and following the suggestions and the advice that we give you.
Yeah. And truthfully, I didn't say it today, but it's reality. When you take our program, you are in our program until the day you're hired. You've got a year of the live classes, unlimited the rest of the training, and limited access to the community. So the only reason you shouldn't have a good job is if you don't do the work and stick with it. Because that's why we're not a boot camp. That's why we take people all year long. Because if you're a boot camp, you say, oh, your 16 weeks are up, leave. With us, that's just ridiculous. We want to get you as soon as we can because time is money when it comes to working in high-paying jobs. So we want you hired faster, and we let you stay until you're hired. All I care is that your life changes by the end of our program. And I care about it deeply. So that's why we do our model. The live piece is, we rotate things, so we go back and forth to it. So pretty much when everybody joins, they get access to everything. And then the classes and projects are self-paced. So no matter when you join, you get everything, but you stay with us until you're hired. That to me is very important.
Very true. Very true, gentlemen. From Renato, I already have experience in the cloud as a public cloud specialist, which in some way I'm already made some architecture, designing specifically in the identity access management that relates to cybersecurity. Now I need to understand that what I really wanted is that I want cybersecurity, or do I want to become a cloud architect? What is your advice for people who already have experience but are a little confused as to where they want their career to go?
Yes. Can you come off mute, Muramato? Because I'd love to
Renato,
ask you some questions to better guide you.
Renato,
I'm going to click.
to hear from you.
Hello, you hear me,
Hello.
Hello,
right?
Renato. Yes.
Awesome, awesome.
Hi,
Yeah,
Renato.
that's my challenge for the moment.
So
Yeah.
the question is, what do you love? Because you can be anything you want tomorrow. What do you love?
Can I open my video? I cannot.
Yes, please.
I cannot. Sorry. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, your
There you
video's
go.
loud.
There
Oh,
I
that's
am.
better.
All right. So, that's a big challenge for me right now because I do a lot the same as you. I did a lot of certifications, but
Good.
it seems to be that it's I'm really confused if where I am going right now because most of my experience are in the cloud, and also I also have a good understanding when it comes to on-premise infrastructure, but then reflecting on where am I going, it seems to be that I'm leaning in between of the cybersecurity space and architectural space. But in my mind, I really wanted to design or to help the organization. That's really my goal because that's the goal of my of why I'm working, right? To help the organization. So uh, I'm now reflecting what would be the best role that I want to achieve in order for me to give the uh best what do you call that help for the organization to achieve their business ideas or business goals. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
So
yeah.
you can help. Well, I'm going to break down both architect jobs for you. You will be
Mhm.
helping the organization in either way. If you're a security architect, you'll be protecting them from danger, which is
Yeah.
I consider to be A, honorable, helping an organization. Now, if you focus on being like an enterprise architect or an enterprise cloud architect or even a cloud architect, you are going to have a much bigger impact on the organization. But here's the reason. If you're focused on the corporate strategy, you're ultimately going to be taking a bigger role. The general or the admiral in military has the ability to exercise more influence than that frontline warrior. Everybody is important, but they have the ability to make a bigger impact or a bigger difference. You know, when I was in healthcare, I had the ability to make an impact to one at a time. In healthcare leadership, you can manage 100 doctors and make an impact of all of their patients by making your doctors better, for example. So you'll have a bigger impact in an enterprise architect role or a cloud architect role. You will also earn more by far in a business oriented role than there'll be a technology role. Now, this is not my perspective, but here's what people see. People see your impact on the business. And how do they measure impact on a business? Either top line revenue, net income, or free cash flow. That's pretty much the only thing that's measurable for the most part. And then they can measure employee productivity out of percentages of that. So if you can create a strategy, and I've worked with clients that do $20 billion a year of revenue, and if you can figure out some system, some kind of technology that can help increase their profit, their sales by 1%, it's not that complicated to do. You know, that's $200 million a year. So you walk in there, you're earning $500,000 and you're able to create a solution to something that's $200 million a year. And maybe it costs them $100 million one time. And they can do that for 5 years. You created $500 million of money for that organization to either return to its shareholders, give to its employees, what have you. So, you know, you're going to have a bigger impact there and you're going to earn more. But, you know, I know people with MBAs that decided they wanted to go join the Navy SEALs and did, and it made them happy. And, you know, they protected our country. And I'm assuming protected some other people along the way. So you can be in an impactful role and help anywhere, whether you're the nurse that takes care of the patient, the doctor that writes a prescription, the firefighter that rescues someone from a fire. These are all roles, and it's how you carry yourself in those roles and what you do. But if you're looking for the most financial impact, it's going to be the enterprise architect side of it. If you're looking for the most technical side, but they're both good. So then it becomes, what do you love and what's going to make you happy?
Yeah. Well said.
And something for you to keep in mind, Renato, is part of the program includes these phases where you'll go through in trying to establish what type of leniencies do you have. Do you gravitate towards the cloud architect role, a security architect role, or perhaps a generic architect role? So those are all feasible options that you can have at your disposal. And it's okay that as you learn more about this, right? Because generally speaking, is when you think about why are we confused? We're generally confused because we don't have a direction, or we're being bombarded by the fact that as somebody who's closer to a technology, we're more concerned with the aspect of what's the next technology that we can learn. So that's one of those things that we have to be able to change your mindset over to. It's not about the technology. I always say focus on technology, maybe 30 or 40% of your studies, and then the rest you focus on these skills that make you a great architect, but also a great person in general. And those are these soft skills, from leadership to communication, verbal and written communication, being able to have conversations with people and lead teams, maybe not in the easiest of circumstances. So those are the things that generally you want to focus on first. And over time, as you're being kind of exposed to these different technologies and you start to see what it really entails to be a cloud architect, what does it really entail to be an enterprise architect? That's where all of a sudden, with more context, right, more information, you should find a way to be able to see, okay, I really like this idea of being an enterprise architect, because it really allows me to have the most impact when it comes to an organization. So, and the beauty with the program is, guess what? If you
Mm.
sign up, let's say, as the enterprise architect, you're going to get the technology training anyway. That's part of the cloud architect program. So
Yeah,
it's not like you're missing out from that perspective, right? So, but
definitely.
you have to be able to gather information, which might take a little bit of research, really give it some thought. And then we always say you need the right training and the right people to at least give you a direction. Because at least if you have a direction, you can start aiming that arrow towards it, right? You at least kind of know where you have to go. So just
Yeah,
wanted to give you that little
agree.
tidbit to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that's what I really need for now, the direction.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Renato.
Thank you so much. And if you've got another question, I'd love to help.
Okay, the next question is going to be from Hema. Are you planning to cover various architectural tools and network diagrams in the development programs?
So, HEMA, the answer is yes. We do teach basic network diagramming. But here's the thing. I would equate that to when you're hiring an economist to say, can you type on your keyboard? Or when you're hiring a doctor saying, do you know how to use the stethoscope? So what we do is much bigger. That is just the most basic entry-level part of our job. And the reality is, as you move up in your architecture career, you won't even be using them. I mean, quite frankly, at my level, I typically draw something on a piece of paper, take a picture of it with my phone, and send it to someone from the graphics team and ask them to create this beautiful thing in InDesign. That's what we did at Cisco as enterprise architects. As systems engineers or junior level architects, sure, we teach you how to use a Lucid chart or Draw IO and have you make some network diagrams. But remember, that's the equivalent of typing in our world. We will teach you that, but we will give you the skills to be able to go to a client and examine their business and create a solution to optimize their performance. We will teach you how to close multi-$100 million deals. We will teach you how to create environments that don't go down, as if you needed to design it for a bank or an internet service provider, for example. We'll teach you how to be a world-class architect. At some point, you won't even need to make those diagrams anymore because it'll be beneath you.
Yeah, and you also need to understand that the programs that you'll be using or the tools could potentially vary based on what organization you work for. So for example, I've used predominantly Visio in the past, and then we had a business process management system that would take care of basically the analytics, the orders that would come on, and anything that is associated with a particular solution the customer wants. But that particular BPM system that we called it, the business process management system, was custom made for this organization. So you kind of have to keep in mind there isn't specifics that we can always impart you with specific knowledge, but as you go through it, you'll notice that, for example, Alonso would use one particular tool to display his analytics or display his type of diagrams, while I might use one specific program. And then you might see Mike and myself also use PowerPoint, which is also a tool that you should definitely learn how to use because that's predominantly what you're going to be using when you're given the presentations. But it would be dishonest for me to tell you, yes, you'll necessarily get specific Visio training or Draw IO training or Lucidchart training, but you will definitely see these tools as we do our presentations. And as you become part of the actual group projects, you'll also be exposed to other architects that are in training on the tools that they have been advised and also taught on. So you'll have plenty of exposure to different tools that are going to be used within your career.
Sure. And the reason I want to make it very clear, the reason I said it's going to be beneath you to spend your time doing these things is as follows. I can guarantee you right now, there's not an architect that I ever met that can create a diagram like a marketing professional could in Adobe InDesign. Now, if I make a document and in Alonso's youth, he did some graphic arcs, I can make a diagram and Alonso can make it. Alonso's would be published by Microsoft on their website or IBM on their website. Mine will look like those things you would see in an AWS chart. Alonso's closed billion-dollar deals. Now, Alonso, a good architect, costs $300,000 to $500,000 a year. How much if I needed to hire a good graphic artist that could design graphic designs better than any architect in the world could do? What would it cost me annually to hire them?
Depending on the role, it would definitely be a fraction, but still be about $70,000 to $80,000 annual.
Okay. So let's say I hire them for $100,000 a year and I want to get a rock star graphic artist. That's a whole lot cheaper than $300,000 to $500,000 from my architect who will never be able to create what one of those graphic artists can create.
Absolutely.
That's why, when you're an architect or you're a business executive, you do what you do best. And when you work for a company like an Amazon or a Cisco or an IBM, they're going to have somebody to tune up your graphics anyway once you get to a certain level, because they can't
Absolutely.
afford to pay you to do that. They need you to do other things that drive revenue.
Also, we have two final questions, gentlemen.
That's all right. We'll ask them once.
Okay. Both of them actually are from Bob, so I will break them down into
And then
question
there's
one.
one after that.
Okay. Bob, should I still pursue an MBA even after your program and or getting employed, or should I pursue it simultaneously with the chosen development program?
Bob, that's a really great question. Do I love MBAs? The answer is yes. I have one. Lonzo has one. Chris has one. If I don't have MBAs, I have CCIEs. I also have 2 PhD business school professors in the program, among others. So I love the MBA. It is the ultimate, yes, you have business acumen stamp on your resume, or it says. So the answer is yes. So when do you do it? The timing. An MBA is typically going to cost, $50,000 to $150,000 and about 2 years of your time. Is it valuable? Yes. Is it worth doing it? Yes. Having said all of that, would I do it now? I probably wouldn't. I would probably do our program. And after our program, when you get hired, I would have the employer pay for my MBA. My employer paid for about 80% of my MBA. Most people that are in an architecture role will get good tuition reimbursement. Maybe it's $15,000 a year for the average employee, but you can also go to your manager and say, look, and your manager can get special approval. And lots of time they'll pay for $102,000 and $300,000 MBAs as well. So instead of taking on the student loans, I'd say get yourself a good $150,000 to $250,000 architect job. Have that employer invest in you. Let them send you for an MBA. Let them pay for your MBA. And that's what I did.
Next question. Is it possible to discuss the strategy for working around job listings I am seeing for architectural roles requiring prior experience and sometimes substantial years of experience? How do we mitigate that?
So don't worry about it. So if you wanted to get a job at McDonald's, they want 3 to 5 years experience. Want to work at a hotel reception desk? They want 3 to 5 years of experience. You know how many years of experience they wanted for my first senior network engineer job? 15. The job that Al Legister took at Deloitte for senior solution architect, on average, they asked for 15. JP Morgan Chase really likes 10 to 15 years experience, but Wallace Agana was hired there with 0. JP Morgan Chase always wants 5 to 10 years experience as a solution architect, but Jennifer Emo was hired without him. And her last job was in mental health tech. They also hired high school dropout Daniel Bosu. I love this kid. He wouldn't mind me calling him a high school dropout because he's a rock star. He's incredible. I wish he was my son. I love the kid so much. He came to us and we trained him. We actually retrained him after another boot camp, but that's how I feel about this guy. So, I mean, impressive. Pierre Dassault had 0 experience before he got hired. Debbie Griffin had 18 million certifications before she came to us, and she got her first solution architect job after it. Gideon had absolutely none before he was hired. Arun over there got hired at TELUS, and he didn't have a day's worth of experience. He was working at Home Depot at the time. Noah Parker was a social worker who was hired at a head. So, I give you a few more. I don't think I mentioned Ramul P or Marco, who was hired by Google, or I mentioned Delroy, who was hired at CDW, and I mentioned, well, actually, I don't think Malad had any, I don't know whether Malad had experience or not, but Jeffrey West had 0 experience before he was hired. And Sweeth, well, she was a DevOps engineer, but we retrained her to be an architect. Amaranth got his first job at Bell Media with no prior experience. So the key is employers care about competency. It's near impossible to find competency. I'm going to demonstrate what it's like to interview someone. I'm going to demonstrate how to answer it correctly. And then I'm going to show you what we hiring managers see 99% of the time. Mark, first, I'll do it correctly. Ask me 2 or 3 network questions. I'm going to run late because I feel like this is so important for all of you. Mark, ask me some basic networking questions that most people can't answer when you interview them.
Okay. Mike, it's a pleasure that you be able to join us today. Within our infrastructure, we do deploy the routing protocol OSPF.
Okay.
I see based on your resume that you had some exposure to this routing protocol, and you specifically mentioned that you've been able to implement this protocol. I am curious to know, was this based on a shared network segment, such as a switching environment, or was this more of a point-to-point type of segment that you were implementing in it? I'm curious to know of how you dealt with the actual exchange of the LSAs when it comes to this type of network type.
Yeah, it's a very reasonable question. Mark, I've configured both. I've configured OSPF on point-to-point interfaces, whether they be frame relay interfaces, whether sub interfaces, whether they be point-to-point T1s, T3s, OC3s, OC12s, and OC192s. But I've also can put it on Ethernet segments, which are obviously broadcast multi-access. Granted, there's some tuning things to do if you're in a multi-plane interface, for example. But no, I've been working with it. Totally understand it.
Were there any type of optimizations that you implemented when it came to working with your point-to-point systems compared to a multi-access broadcast system?
Yeah, there were some, but realistically, I'll tell you, it was more the optimizations that I had to work on were as follows. You know, when you've got a corporate environment and they've got their wide area network and they've got their area, say in Europe, and they've got 2,000 routers there, and they've got their environment in, say, the US with 1,000 routers, and they've got another one in Asia. You know, getting OSPF to work across those links, that's really no big deal. But the problem is we've got a flapping link in Asia that sends an LSA update, and every router in the entire world needed to respond to that. So either, you know, the optimizations are, you know, create multi-mini autonomous systems and use BGP to route between them, or create a backbone area and then summarize the other areas. So that's really the bigger issue. Now, that's the kind of answers we would hope to get. Mark, if you got that from someone that never worked before, would you be happy with that?
I'd be ecstatic because it actually helps me understand that you have some concept of how OSPF is supposed to be working. Now, there will probably be minor follow-up questions that I would give somebody in trying to figure out, do they actually understand in regards to what type of LSAs are being developed? Because my natural progression, I know we don't have time for it, but just so everybody knows, I would have naturally progressed towards asking eventually Mike, since he brought out wide area networks, is how does he, if at all, implement a multi-area type of design? Are there even ever been something that's been exposed to? That should also help me understand, if he now understands, how does OSPF actually disseminate information across the different areas? And then if he could slightly answer it the way he just did, he'd be golden. I already be thinking about a figure to offer him at that point.
Right. Whether I have experience or not. Now,
Yep.
I have 10 years experience, and this is what 99% of my interviews go like, and I've interviewed 6,000 people. Now, I'm going to have 10 years of experience. I'm going to have 10 certifications, and now I'm going to give you the answer the hiring manager normally hears. Pick a question for me. Now, this is the experience.
Oh, you want a question? Okay.
Yeah.
Does it matter what it is?
Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to answer it like 99% of the people answer an interview question.
Okay. Mike, thank you again for being here and taking the time out to interview with us. I'm a little bit curious. I myself, I'm not too well versed when it comes to databases in general, but we do have plenty of databases here. Could you tell me, when it comes to the storage needs of a NoSQL database, what are the potential different storage types that might be something that could work?
Mark, it's storage. It's just storage. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a hard drive or block storage. It's just storage. I know this because I'm certified.
Do you, by any chance, at least know what type of storage types exist?
Yeah. We got NVMe drives, SSD drives, RAID. We have some object storage, block storage, you know, that kind of stuff.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. I am curious to know, could you tell me the exact framework that Fiber Channel uses when determining its actual stack from top to bottom?
Yeah, fiber channel is the really cool thing. Basically, it's Ethernet, but it's over some fiber optic cables, and that's fiber channel. Trying to summarize it there for you.
Right. Well, Mike,
Now,
thank you very much.
Mark,
I
I have to
appreciate that.
tell you, I've got 10 years experience and 15 certifications.
That is very impressive. I would have actually appreciated if you could have explained to me the different phases of fiber channel in general. But I tell you what, I see based on your resume that you mentioned you have done some type of cloud design before as well. It looks like within a healthcare system. That's why I was curious to know in regards to the databases, because these are crucial systems that also require confidentiality. You ever dealt with anything like that, confidentiality, when it comes to healthcare databases?
Yeah, of course, we put a firewall at the edge of the network and we encrypt the drive, and we've got good confidentiality.
All right. Oh, excuse me, just for one moment. I just got an email. Just give me 1 second, okay?
And now he's going to tell me to come back when I have more experience. So that's
Yeah.
the difference. The first one doesn't matter if I had any experience. I showed him I could do the job in the manner that I showed understanding and honesty. In the second one, I gave him ridiculous answers. I bluffed and I lied. And he's going to find his way out of there. So that's how you get around it. You have marketing experts like Alonzo teach you how to build such a strong brand that people come to you. And that's why we've got an MBA in marketing with 30 years marketing executive experience. Plus, you know, Alonzo and I could be brothers, honestly. And there's lots of other good things that Alonzo does. But, you know, that's why we have a chief marketing officer here to do those kind of things for our students. And then we make sure our students can answer that. You want to ask Chow a question? Well, we'll do it now. But you ask Chow a question, what do you see the kind of answers you would get from her? Because she knows. And that's the secret.
Outstanding,
And
Mike
also,
and Mark. Go ahead, please.
yep, I just wanted to give you guys an example too. I gave Mike a very specific fiber channel question where I was looking for layers. I wanted him to explain to me the layers. Now, most people don't know them on top of their head, which is okay. But because of how Mike ended up answering the questions first, you'll generally speaking get a hiring manager ask you such a ridiculous question that gives them a 100% reason to can you out of the interview and from the job. So those are reasons why, even without experience, if you at least present yourself as competent during the interview, you will get by without having the experience, because it shows that you actually understand something. I would never ever, if Mike answered the fiber channel question that I had in regards to storage and give me the different storage types, I would have not asked him such a detailed question. As a matter of fact, if he's an architect interviewing for it, that question, if he could answer that, I would most likely dismiss him from the position anyway, because I shouldn't expect him to know that.
No.
Just so that everybody realizes some of the tactics
But I
that you'll
bluffed
see
and
going on.
lied, which ended it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was ready to tell him that I got something else going after the email and that we'll have to revisit potentially in case, you know, we go on with the search. But these are things you do learn within the program on how the questions are going to be phrased to you, how you're going to answer them. So it's very good to keep in mind that there's more to the entire career development program than just technology on how to develop yourself into being a rock star architect.
Yeah.
Our last and final question is back to Sridhara. I am almost in a similar boat as Renato mentioned. My profile started from tech architect to integration architect, solution enterprise, and so forth. Now I'm a bit undecided. What should my target be? Please help me.
What do you want to do, Siddhartha? What do you enjoy? What's going to make you want to wake up in the morning? And you can feel free to come off mute and answer that. One of the things that really typically upsets me in life is people don't realize they can literally be anything they want to be. And that's really the secret. You know, let's say you have someone that's overweight. They ate bad food yesterday, the day before, and probably for the previous 30 years. There's nothing that stops them the next day from eating a healthy diet and exercising. Nothing. You know, I was a firefighter paramedic. Then I was a nurse. Then I had an internal medicine practice as a nurse practitioner. 6 months later, I was working as a lead architect at the world's largest internet service provider in the world. And less than a year after that, I was a lead network architect, a senior architect with 6 months experience on Wall Street at the largest market maker on the NASDAQ. So, you know, you can be anything. But really the key is, in order to be great, you have to love it. You're not going to find an Olympic swimmer that hates swimming. You're not going to find an Olympic gymnast that doesn't like gymnastics. To be great, because you can have a good career, make money in anything, you've got to be in that top 5% to be really, really great. What does the top 5% always have? And it's not that hard to be in the top 5%. They're the ones that have the laser-like focus. They're the ones that say, I love this. This is important to me. This is interesting to me. And I am going to put all my time, effort, love, and training time, and even some amount of their budget into doing these things. It's the reason the CCIEs, and I'm a CCIE, spend $20,000 on a CCIE in a year to pass one exam, or 2 years for others, because we love networking so much and we're willing to go way above and beyond. And of course, the opportunities roll in after that, because we're the few people that have the degree of competency. So keep that in the back of your mind. You can do whatever you want. You want to come off mute, I can see what you like. But I would say I would probably focus on enterprise architecture if you're looking to maximize the opportunities in your career, because you're going to earn the most. But you got to be happy. I could get an architect job, well, 3 offers in a day, and it would pay me more than running a company, especially when I try to run most of our things at cost so we can train the world's people and create the next generation of tech leaders. But I love this. So I don't care. This is my love. I love every day, or nearly every day, when someone says, Mike, I'm hired. That to me is food, energy, magnet, and I love what I do. So you got to love what you do to be great at it.
And I'll add this. If you want to look at it from a strategic perspective, you're always trying to get into something where you gain the most bang for your buck. So for example, we have this sale going on right now, and it applies to all the programs. And in your case, and in Renato's case as well, if you're not 100% sure if cloud architecture, and then it's additional categories from network architecture to cloud architecture to security, if you're not 100% sure if that's going to work for you, you recall earlier we mentioned that all the other, what we would consider upper programs that we have in place, from the Gen AI towards the enterprise, they do include the technology training that you generally find within the career development training as well. So from that perspective, the biggest bang of your buck that you would get is going with one of those programs. And the reason I would suggest that is, number one, within the enterprise program, you receive a lot more business training. And when you look at it, to be able to give yourself the best possibilities, the most flexibilities, that's where these soft skills are going to come in. Being able to communicate with the people that make the decisions, okay? There's some of that training within the career development program for cloud architects, but not as much when it comes to the actual enterprise, because enterprise, what are we saying, Mike? That's about 80% business, maybe 20% tech, if not less.
Yeah.
Right. So from that perspective, that's what I would say. If you're undecided yet, go for something where you're going to be at the heartbeat of an organization. That's going to be enterprise or Gen AI. But at the same time, because we don't want to shortchange you, you still get that technology training.
Yeah.
So let's say you do find yourself saying, you know what, I do enjoy a little bit more tech than I do enjoy business. Well, guess what? Because you're within the enterprise architect program now, you're going to be a much better cloud architect, much better network architect, much better security architect. As a matter of fact, just taking the business training from the enterprise program and applying it to your current role or current situation in life, you're going to see that that itself is going to pay dividend immediately back. So your return on investment is going to be a lot higher, especially with the sale going on, going for something that's more business focused, because everything else is already added into it. So that's my unbiased opinion. This is something that I would personally do, because it allows me to gain the most out of my investment into my education that I'm going to give myself. And at the same time, I always love a good sale. Why not? That's actually, if you haven't watched the CCIE that we did, the CCIE discussion on Tuesday, I actually explained that's what I did. I looked ahead on the potential of what I could accomplish, and I started start allocating my resources that way. So you can do the same thing. Again, as Mike mentioned, there's no pressure. You're going to be in the program. You don't graduate until you don't get that job, and you're always going to be in a program until then. So I hope that gives you a little bit understanding to both Renato and you as well, Sridhara, in regards to what your actual options are within our structure that we have. But aside from that, if you're just unsure, as Mike mentioned, it's going to require additional research to clarify any misunderstandings that you might have about a particular role.
And then I'll answer the last two fairly quickly. Hema asked, how long does the course take on average? Well, you stay in the course until you're hired. I mentioned you've got a year in the live class, as well as unlimited time in our forums, access to our information. And we consistently record every class, so you'll get access to every new class as well. Everyone will. You're part of our program. I'd say on average, it takes 6 to 12 months. If you're a shy person, it might take a little longer. If you're one of those people that's really gregarious and outgoing and likes to talk to people, you're there. And of course, if you get hired 3 months into it because you're motivated, you can stay on the program and keep coming back. We just want you to be great architects. And we've got lots of students, including students that work at AWS, that continually attend our classes even after we trained them and got them hired at AWS. So we have no issue with that. The next question is regarding the student add-on. The student add-on is only for existing Go Cloud career students. So if a student took our Cloud Architect program and they wanted to add the Enterprise Architect, there's no reason for them to buy the Enterprise Architect program because the full program, because they have already got a lot of it in their Cloud Architect program. So the student add-on is for current students that have decided to say, hey, I want to be a cloud architect, but this AI architect thing is so exciting for me. I just want to add it on. We don't want them to pay full price because they're our current students. We just want to charge them for the additional technology. We love our students and we love getting them hired. Did that answer your question, Chris, Ann, and Bob? Is for the current students that are part of a program. Okay, so we will close this out now. I will say the average architect in the US earns $1,000 a day at our current course pricing with 50% off because we love to celebrate holidays around here. At $1,200, it's a little more than the 1 day's pay for our average graduate. Put that into context compared to say $100,000, which to actually go to a university in 6 or 7 years of your time to get a job that would pay the same. I love this architecture role. It is the best job I've ever had. I've been an architect for more than a quarter of a century. I could be a grandfather of a future architect for how long I've actually been in this industry and how much I actually love it, because it's been, literally speaking, the best job I have ever had. And all of you can be great architects. All of you can do anything you want. I hope to train you, but if not, you know what we do. For those of you that did or join our program, please, I'm begging you, read the emails we send to you. Those are the emails about how to get to class, how to maximize the use of the program. If we sell a program, I want you to have a great architecture career. And part of that is doing the work. And that's why we send you that email. So please read it because I want you all to be as successful. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and hope to see many more of you in class. And I could see some of you in class at 4 p.m. today. Now that we look forward to working with you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody,
so
for
much,
showing up.
And look forward to working too as well, Bob. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Take care.